This is Colleen from Keeping the Peace, Defensive Handgun Training for Women, and this is episode 3 of the Preparing the New Shooter series. If you're already familiar with this series, you've already probably seen episode 1 where we talked about safety and keeping the mind engaged. Episode 2, we talked about gripping the gun with authority. Today we're going to talk about using a stable fighting platform when you're shooting. I'm going to mention several points that you should consider when deciding what type of stance or platform to use. There are lots of different ones, and there's not one stance that works for every person. I don't prescribe a single stance. I try to take each individual into consideration. Our bodies are put together a little differently, our weight is distributed differently, so what feels very balanced to me may not feel balanced to you. So I'm not going to tell you that you have to stand the way I do. You're never going to fight for your life standing straight up and down like this, okay? It's just not going to happen. So be sure that you practice shooting with a lowered center of gravity and a wide foot placement. The wide foot placement helps you to be stable from side to side. Okay? Most people, when they fight, like if you were going to throw a punch, you would probably put your support side foot forward. So one of the ways to find out what you naturally do when you're fighting is to throw a punch and see what your body naturally does. Mine naturally blocks the face, throws the punch with a support side foot forward. That gives me balance from front to back to make sure that I'm not teeter-tottering. Okay? So wide placement of the feet keeps me balanced side to side, and then a foot forward keeps me balanced front to back. So the two things work together. So that's something to consider. The other thing that you need to consider is, are you able to maintain alignment with the bone structure of your firing arm behind the gun? However you stand, you need to make sure that you're able to do that, okay? You also need to make sure that you're able to point the gun naturally. If you twist half of your body and you're having to fight your musculature to get the gun on target, that's not a good stance for you. You need to make sure that the gun naturally points toward where you're aiming without you having to fight the musculature of your own body. I have found that most of the shooters that I've worked with shoot better if both their thumbs and their toes are pointing toward the target. The other thing you want to consider is make sure that you don't lean away from the gun. I see a lot of people practice either straight up or kind of leaned away, and those are two things you definitely don't want to do. If you're fighting for your life, the last thing you want to do is, number one, look like you're scared of your gun, and number two, be easy to topple over, okay? So leaning away from the gun is never a good idea. Also, when you're bending forward, punching forward into the target or into the threat, you're not punching forward at the back like this, like sticking your tail end out and bowing the back. You don't want to do that. That's not a natural way to hold your body. You want to bend forward at the hips, which is where the legs join, okay? So your back should be straight. The last thing is find what feels good, stable, points well for you, and then be consistent. Do the same thing every single time. So your stable fighting platform should have wide foot placement, okay, a lowered center of gravity. Your bone structure of your firing arm should be lined up behind your gun. You should be able to maintain aim without having to fight the musculature of your own body. You should never be leaning away from the gun, and you should always be consistent. So I hope that you'll join me for episode 4 of the Preparing the New Shooter series, where we'll talk about sight alignment. Have a great day. God bless.